Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Today I am really excited to share a guest and someone who I hope becomes a dear friend because I'm really enjoying getting to know her, Dr. Debi Grebenik. Debi, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm just tickled to death that you asked. And right off the bat, good job. You said my name right. That's a win.
I'll have to practice a little bit a few times. So thanks for the kudos. I appreciate that.
You bet.
So Debi, tell our listeners a little bit about what you do.
Well, I do an assortment of different things. I have a varied career. I've been mostly in secular world and mostly in child welfare. So I've been the director of a foster care organization that also did domestic violence advocacy. We did clinical work. I've worked on the governor's task force for human trafficking. And I've been very involved in our community around mental health. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've also taught for 22 years in graduate school. And then currently I work for a small nonprofit where we are teaching organizations how to show up with trauma competencies. It's not enough to be trauma informed. We need to know what to do with that information. And we do a lot around organizational change. So I do leadership coaching strategies, a wide variety of different things, and mostly from a consult perspective.
Oh, that is just so awesome. If you could see me from the podcast, for the people listening, I'm doing We're Not Worthy, I'm Not Worthy hand bowing to Dr. Debi today. So I just love the variety of experiences that you've had and just the many areas that you have competency in. That is really cool. And I especially appreciate you talking about the difference between having information about something and the competency to actually approach it. I think we have kind of an interesting thing happening in our culture now where people have emotional awareness, but not emotional intelligence. They can verbalize their emotions, but that doesn't mean that they're processing them in a more healthy way. So that's a great delineation. Thank you for that.
Well, obviously I get bored easy, so I try to, that's really where that comes from. So you can give me kudos, but I think it really comes from a place of that, oh gosh, I got to figure out something else. And I love to meet the people that are doing the work. I think I'm a better coach than I am player. I'm much better at helping others figure it out than I am sometimes at doing it myself. So I think that that's part of why I enjoy this field so much.
That's wonderful. Well, let's take that coach and let's do a little bit of holiday survival guide today. I want to talk about what the holidays look like, just average challenges every year. And then especially this year with COVID and the political climate and all of the tension. And so I think that giving people some extra tips and tricks and maybe some hacks on how to come home without having taken anyone's life at your holiday Christmas celebration would be really helpful this year. So Debi, what do you anticipate might be some unique experiences for people this year?
Well, I think that we cannot even start this conversation without addressing the fact that grief will be very, very present because we're grieving what was, we're grieving expectations, we're grieving all those things. Maybe it's you don't get together with your family and do your Christmas caroling or tour around a particular place to see lights. Maybe you don't get to even come together as a family because someone is at high risk and we don't want to expose or create opportunity. I think that holidays bring up grief already. And so we have a layer of this that is something totally unprecedented. We've never gone through something like this. And I think that because of that, we don't even know what we don't know, and we don't know how to predict it. And whenever we can't predict it, that creates anxiety. And because if we don't know what's happening, the unknown creates lots of anxiety. So I think that we have to be aware of the fact that we don't really know what to do with what's coming because we don't know what's coming. And we don't. And so living with uncertainty is really hard. And so that creates some anxiety for us. And then you have that grief, and then you have isolation. And it's like this quagmire of overwhelmingness of not knowing where to go and what to do with it. So a lot of emotions, and we don't have names for those emotions because they're new, it's different. So I think that that's part of where we are. We're like, what is this? What am I feeling? Yes, I'm feeling something. And you said it so well. You said we're aware, but we don't know what we don't know what to do with it. And I think that's right. I'm aware I'm feeling some of this stuff. I just don't know what to do with all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that maybe something we could do is just maybe project a couple of outcomes for people where we can imagine that maybe things will be different because someone decides to stay home where they would have normally come to celebrate with us, or maybe the meal looks different because we're trying to prepare it in a different way. And so there's not that potluck style happening, for instance. Maybe we have a family that has a blend of political ideologies. And so we're kind of thinking about how we can have nice conversation without stepping on each other's toes. So can you maybe put out a couple of ideas about what people might experience this year to sort of give them a vision for the road ahead?
Well, you didn't hold back on any of those questions now, did you? let's just start out with some. And did you want to throw in, and how should we get world peace in there as well?
I saw that you decorated for Christmas. We could talk about your really super cute little Christmas tree for us that you showed me.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting because I'm like Martha Stewart on steroids at Christmas time, and my husband is the bah humbug. And so I have to say that Christmas has been one of the more challenging seasons in our marriage of 42 years. And he's a great guy with a significant trauma history. And often what we know about people is that the holidays, when you have situations, financial comes into play, when you have your own trauma, that sometimes we act differently during a concentrated holiday time where we're spending so much time together and we're having concentrated, and we're not able to get outside to blow off steam and do what we need to because weather may be limiting factors. So I think that for me, what I've learned is that this is a time to raise up your grace. Just crank it up. It's we've got to show up with grace. We got to give grace to ourselves, and we've got to give grace to other people because we don't know their stories. And so you mentioned maybe somebody's not coming to your house for holidays. I have grown children with grandchildren, and they get to make their own decisions. And my role as the matriarch in our family is to respect and honor the decisions they're making for their own families, even when it's hard. And by golly, I want my hands on those 7 grandkids at all times, and it's hard. And this is a time where we have to do what we feel comfortable with. And everybody, as I'm just observing, everybody has such a different comfort level. And so we have to not judge. I think that we say that all the time, and our scripture teaches us that. But I'm telling you, that's kind of the first place our brain goes. Well, so I'm doing this, and why can't you? I think it also comes out, the same concepts are true about the political arena as well. We need to allow and respect and honor the fact that we all approach things differently. And here's what I often say: it's not good or bad, it's just different. and we can just live in the space of being different. And that's where grace is found, in understanding that difference is not assigned intentionality, and it's not assigned a value. It's not assigned, well, you're different than I am, so that's bad, or you're different than I am, and that's good. It's just we're different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one thing that I try, notice the word, try to live out and show up with curiosity, not judgment, and grace. I just, I keep thinking of that song, Grace, Grace, God's Grace, and I'll spare you. Rachel could sing for you. She has a beautiful voice. I sound like a frog underwater. And so, but just thinking about that song, Grace, Grace, God's Grace, He gave it to us so that we can give it to others. And sometimes I think we get so wound up in ourselves that we forget to let it flow freely through us. And I don't know about you, Rachel, but I need grace. I need grace like every single day.
Mm-hmm. I want to circle back around to what you said. You said, come with curiosity and not judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to take a big highlighter and sweep across that over and over again, because I think that that is a huge key in preventing offense in all relationships. And so could you give us a little bit more information on that? Maybe an example, someone says something to you, it ruffles your feathers. Maybe it's something about your sweet potato casserole, or maybe it's about your presidential candidate. What do you do to come with curiosity?
That's a great question. And it is a skill that we can learn, and we can grow, and we can perfect it. And it's, I have a couple phrases that I often will say. And here's one of the things that's happened in my own marriage. I will say something and have a reaction from my dear sweet husband, and I've said it in a tone. And what I'll just say is, something didn't land right. Not like, why are you acting that way? All I said was da, 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 da. Because that's my tendency. That's where I go. Because I always want to be right. That's important to me. I want to be right. I want to have the last word. And that doesn't really work well in relationships. So giving curiosity to say something that's very kind of benign. If something didn't land, that's a really easy way of saying that. Tell me what that's about. That's another really good one. Those are my two go-tos, because they don't come in with values about and put that person on the defense. I'm really saying I see something, not quite sure what it is, and I'm just trying to ask about it. And I don't want to put them off. I want to just lean in a little bit. And I usually have really good conversations after that. People will say, yeah, you're right. There's something about your tone there. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Can I have a redo? And it's taken me years to get there because I don't think I heard how sharp my tone was. I don't think I heard how, demanding or controlling, whatever word you want to use on that, come from a family where women just are bossy and they tell people what to do. So that's just what we do. And I think it's deep in the marrow of my bones. And so we've had to work really hard to not do that. And it's still my tendency when I'm fatigued or when I'm stressed. We got to remember that to get everything fit in the holidays, we end up stressed and fatigued, and then we don't show up as our best self. And so that creates other stressors, and then others judging us because we're not doing what we want to be doing. We're not living according to our values. So it's this whole spiral, and just being aware of it can help prevent some of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you and I have had a conversation where you mentioned, I do better at this when I am grounded and balanced and emotionally regulated myself. So I'm picturing that scenario where you're sitting in the car and, you have the crock pot in your lap and you're dressed up and, you tried to get everybody where they were supposed to be at a certain time, and you're anticipating tension in a particular relationship. What is some perspective, something you could tell yourself? How do you bring yourself in and self-regulate so that you can go in into that situation without a defensive attitude in advance. Because I notice that if I come in anticipating that someone is going to hurt me, I start defensive, and then I can almost precipitate a conflict because I've got an edge. I've got a chip on my shoulder because I'm, thinking like, don't hurt me. And so what you said about that didn't land right, that I think that takes a pause, that requires a moment. You have to take a beat instead of saying the first thing that comes to your mind. You're sitting in the car and you're ready and you're going in, and there's been tension in the relationships on some level about something, or, you voted differently, or, maybe you're just, everybody's tired. It's the holidays. You worked hard to make it pretty and beautiful. What are you telling yourself to become grounded before you open that car door?
The key element there, what you said, I love, because this is so important, is what is the story I'm telling myself? What is that story? What's my narrative that I've built? And so being aware of that, I think, is one of the first things. Am I going, I got to prove myself because they think I'm this, or they don't understand, or they're very critical of me, so I got to show up and let them see me, or whatever. So I think we have to really tune in to what that story is. And that story gets crafted by our experience. It gets crafted by our own lifespan and all the people and the relationships in there. For me, I think when I find myself doing that, I try to remember that people are doing the best they can. And my husband's taught me this. He has the gift of mercy. And I would be at a restaurant and going, well, this is terrible service. And I'd go to that place of being critical, like, we can't even get ketchup. And my husband would look at me and just go, honey, they're probably having a really rough day. And, of course, then I'm like, oh, great. I'm awful because I went straight to that place of being critical. But it was teaching me on a regular basis to look that people are sometimes using everything they can to just show up.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I forget that. And so because of that, I can give them a lot more grace than I normally would, because I'm just accepting that they're probably doing the best they can. And they may be, we do this thing where we compare ourselves to each other also. So they may be comparing themselves to me and going, well, I can't make as good a sweet potato casserole as Debbie. So I'm just going to kind of hide out over here because I'm so intimidated by that perfect casserole. And I'm going, I don't want to go in because, they have the most flawless skin, or and I think one of the things we do is that comparison, and we have a scarcity mentality. We always think somebody else is better. We always are looking at, and then when we believe that, and my husband always says it's unfair to compare, and I just like that. It's so succinct. It's unfair to compare. And then what we do is we get caught up into that scarcity, that there's not enough, and we start believing we are not enough. There's not enough. There's not enough food. There's not enough love. There's not enough success. There's not enough options. There's not, whatever it is. And then we start to internalize that message that we're not enough. And, most of my life, that's where I've camped and lived. I didn't have the words for it, but I didn't know why I was on a performance, treadmill. If I'd only get to the next place, then I would be enough. And so it keeps us from connecting with people when our story we tell ourselves is that we're not enough. So I'm going to go back to getting ready to go in.
Okay.
I'm dressed up. I got the crock pot. And I'm telling myself all these stories. So and they're going to keep me from connecting. So I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm just going to say, okay, Lord, you be me here. You just indwell me in the place so that I can see those people. Because our greatest need is to be seen and heard. And it's also a scary, scary place to be. So help me to listen, help me to see. And I feel like when I can take that moment, you're right. You nailed it. We got to have a pause. You have to be intentional and mindful, and then you can enter in. And I think that's sacred and holy place where you go in and you connect with people in a meaningful way, putting aside all of your narrative, your story, your, all those thoughts about me, because that's just a spin. And that spin keeps us from connecting. It keeps us, it keeps us from being vulnerable. It keeps us in our own head, I guess is what I would say.
It does. It does. I felt that in my body when you said, you sit there and you take a breath and you say a prayer. Just say, Lord, you see me, you know me,
That's right.
and you do not misunderstand me. I'm not confusing to you. You find me acceptable, worthy, lovable. And I just felt so comforted by hearing you say that. And I'm just imagining maybe you need to get up from the table and take a break and take a quote unquote bathroom break and just go stand there in front of the mirror and just, catch your breath. Like if something gets you in your head and you start comparing or, there was a conflict, to just give yourself permission to take that pause, to step away for a second and just reorient. And that is a really powerful tool that you just offered out to everybody. Thank you so much for that. I want to go to what you were talking about with the scarcity mentality. I know in previous years, statistically, people are still paying off their credit cards from Christmas until April. And I've thought a lot about that and what would prompt you to spend, income that you needed to pay off for 3 to 4 more months after the holiday season. And I really do think it's that feeling of the performance mentality, the performance treadmill. We need to have certain gifts. We need to have certain food. We need to have certain clothing. We need to have certain decorations. What can people do? How can they recognize, what does a scarcity mentality look like? How can they recognize it in themselves? And what are some things that we can do to focus on being more wholehearted and less performance oriented?
Those are great questions. First of all, I want to just say, when you spoke those words back that I said, your calming voice, I found myself tearing up. It was like the Holy Spirit's presence just speaking those, because you just said those words. And I'm like, she just spoke those words over me. So maybe much like what you felt, what a blessing that you took the space to do that. So I wanted to acknowledge that, because even in the midst of, I do a lot of teaching and training, and sometimes I forget to take things in because I'm putting things out so much. So it's kind of a blessing to be able to, breathe some things in from other people too. Scarcity mentality, I'm going to give you, having lived most of these years with a man, my husband, who grew up and there wasn't enough food, there wasn't enough clothing, there just wasn't anything. And so he approaches things as though this would come out. I would cook dinner and we'd have company over. We entertain a lot. And he'd go, that's not enough food. That's not enough food. And I thought, he's criticizing me that I didn't plan. And I'd get very offended. I know what I'm doing, just, and I responded kind of from my logical side of my brain until I stopped to listen. What's he really saying? He's really saying there's not going to be enough. I've never had enough. And this is just an example of that. So it's so inbred in him. He didn't see it, and it took me slowing down. And this has happened over our marriage over and over and over. So I've learned a lot about a scarcity mentality. And you know what's interesting? The antidote to scarcity is not abundance. And that's where we go. So maybe I didn't have much growing up. So now I'm not going to buy my daughter one Barbie. I'm going to get every Barbie they have, whether I can afford it or not. So that's what we do with scarcity. We think abundance is the answer, when actually, you know what it is? It's just enough.
Wow.
That's what the answer to scarcity is. It's enough. And I think that's what the scripture teaches us. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't go back. Live today. Live in today. I'll provide for you going forward. And so rather than, and I think that society, I'll just touch on that. Social media, all of that tells us that if we get more, we'll be more.
Yes.
If we get more, we'll be more. And I fall into that. I see an Instagram and then there's an ad and then you click on the ad and it's on sale and you can get these 4 things. And then, you'll look like that person on the Instagram ad. It's never worked for me yet, but I keep hilariously following those links. But I think that, we believe that perfection is the goal. Perfection is a myth. Perfection is a myth. We can't get there. There isn't there.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
So in place of perfectionism, I think that, we long for excellence, right? I think many of us,
Yes.
we slide to one side or the other, right? Like we see the, the Pinterest worthy, the picture perfect feed, and we feel inadequate because, we're on our 3rd day of dry shampoo and we have toys on the floor. And so, I mean, I've heard, I have a friend or something.
Truth.
And so moving from that perfectionism, moving from that performance treadmill to wholehearted living, what does it look like accepting yourself, accepting your family, your holiday celebration for what it is, and what is enough? How do you know what enough is? Especially because I feel like that voice of scarcity is kind of like a dog nipping at your heels. It's not okay to sit down. It's not okay to rest. How do I know that's enough? Or I'm waiting for the bottom to drop out. How do I step into that wholehearted space of contentment and enoughness?
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I know for me that when I base the living and the wholeheartedness on the relationships that I build, then that's when I feel like I get a glimpse of wholeheartedness, not on what I can do, what I can get. In fact, just here's a little tiny example. My girlfriends, I say, let's not get each other gifts. Let's plan an outing together. Let's do an experience. And that to me is saying you matter more than anything you could buy me. And we've done things where we've no makeup, climbed the incline and went out to breakfast together. And just, I think that you have to be intentional because it's really easy to buy a gift. And I'm not against gifts. I love getting gifts. I'm just saying. And I also think wholeheartedness is living true to my values. And so being aware of what my purpose in life is, what my values are, and living according to them. The further we deviate from that, the more that kind of that moral injury happens, where we're not living who God created us to be. That'd be like my trying to be a swim coach. I don't really like the water. I mean, it's totally outside of what God has gifted me to do. And, to show up and go, oh yeah, I'm going to be wholehearted. I'm going to coach swimming. No, that's, first of all, I don't want to live in a bathing suit. So that, let's just be real here. That is not my ideal. And thank you, Jesus, that you didn't call me to that vocation. So I think that the wholeheartedness really comes from just stepping in to how he created you. And I love that you said excellence. Not looking at perfection doesn't mean I live like a slob, but it means I don't have my standard as perfection. And if I don't reach it, then I'm a failure. So I think it's recalibrating what we look at as success or kind of something that we aspire to, because I have goals, I set things, I aspire to do better. I aspire to reach my goals. So perfectionism is not really that. Perfectionism is couldn't possibly ever leave my house without my bed made, everything off the counters. And well, quite frankly, I'd never leave my house then.
Yes.
So, because the reality is there's things where there's real life, there's toys on the floor. I don't have kids at home now, so I don't have many toys on the floor anymore, but still, it's something we think we can achieve. And I think that's one of the values of being an older woman. I can just go, it's not going to happen. And no matter what kind of makeup I get, it's not going to cover all those wrinkles, no matter, perfect. And unless we, do a little bit of photoshopping or something. So anyway, that's a little bit of what I'm thinking. Oh, one other thing before I forget. The other piece with this, a wholehearted living, is I think we have to understand and practice self-compassion. And Kristen Neff has done a lot of research around that. And she really talks about we got to give ourselves the same compassion we would give others.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important thing to remember.
I think that you are a treasure trove on self-compassion. And I would like to pick this up with you on next week's episode. Do you think that we could offer some more life hacks on self-compassion, lowering expectations through the holidays, and just grace and being kind to ourselves?
You bet. I'd love that.
Absolutely. Yay. Okay. I can't wait. And you guys should not wait either. Well, I guess you have to. You have to wait a week, but I promise it'll be worth it. And so come back and find us again next week on the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.